And welcome to Season 3 of Ball with Y'all. I am so excited to be here with you today for yet another season of our show. My name is Shawn Johnson, and I am joined by my good friend, the co-host and co-creator of Ball with Y'all, Zach Gray. Zach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We just got through watching one heck of a NASCAR race today.
We did.
We got college football 3/4 weeks away, depending on what team you follow. And we are at the end of summer, which means it's almost time for the best time of the year.
There you go. And of course, we have had a busy summer, to say the least, here with Ball with Y'all. For those of you who may not be familiar with what Ball with Y'all is all about, maybe you're a first-time listener, maybe joining on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Radio Public, Breaker, or YouTube. Yeah,
I think YouTube. We are on
We're
there,
on YouTube.
sure.
Yeah, so if you're not listening on YouTube, make sure you join us over there as well. Nonetheless, wherever you might be joining us from, we are so glad that you chose to spend your morning, your afternoon, or your evening with us. Like Zach said, we had a busy day today, and then also a busy last few weeks getting ready for today's show and this season. This summer, of course, we wrapped up on June 1st with Season 2, and we took 2 months off. And we said, okay, how can we make Ball with Y'all better? And you heard our new song that came from our good friends at Cube Sounds. A lot of other elements that you'll hear this season as well. We have a lot more segments and other surprises throughout the season, so hopefully you are looking forward to that. Now, if you are a first-time listener of Ball with Y'all, you may not be all that familiar with what we're all about. Zach, what can our listeners expect from us this fall?
They can expect nonstop news and nonsense, if you will, about the SEC. This is an SEC-centered podcast. We're adding another element this year where we're looking around the country, too. We're going to be looking at the Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12, keeping an eye on everything else going on, because we got to know who's going to be losing to an SEC champion come in January, right? And then the other segment we're going to be adding this year, too, is One to Go. That's going to be our NASCAR segment. Obviously, if you are in the South and you are listening, you're an SEC fan, you probably have a favorite driver as well in the great auto sport of NASCAR. So we're going to be adding that on at the end of our shows. And then when that's over, we're also going to be taking a look around professional sports, because around that time we'll be looking at to the end of the NFL season as well. And we'll be keeping tabs on everything else throughout the year with recruiting, with football, transitioning into college basketball in the spring, and finishing off with college baseball before our summer break.
There you go. Well, I think that sets us up well for today's show. And let's begin today's show with our new segment, Let's Crack It Open. All right, so like I said, a busy past few weeks. We just had SEC Media Days, 3-4 weeks ago at this point in time?
Yeah, I'd wager that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. Right. And a lot that came out of that. Of course, we had a lot of coaches going into that weekend and that week that, some coaches are riding a high from a bulletin board material standpoint, and other coaches who needed that opportunity to kind of motivate their teams. Jimbo, right? He seems like he's still kind of trying to work through the tiff with Saban, if you will.
Jimbo Fisher, man, that guy, he runs his mouth as much as his bank account expands every time he gets a new contract from Texas A&M, it seems like. He has somehow, I think, in my opinion, and my Alabama fan co-host beside me here might disagree, I think he's under the skin of Nick Saban. He got him once there last year in Aggie Land, and now he's going to go back into Tuscaloosa this year and give him a hell of a game.
Yeah, I cannot wait to beat him by 3 touchdowns on October 8th. But we'll get more to that once we actually get into the season, of course. Lane Kiffin was signing, was it mustard bottles?
Mustard bottles. I think there might have been a golf ball in there, too. The good fans in Knoxville always provide us ample gifts upon kicking their tails every time we play them. So that was fun to see. Good spirit from Lane as well. I think you can expect good things from him this year. Ole Miss is in a really good position, I think, going into this year with Jackson Dart coming in from USC. I think they're looking at another 9-10 win season potentially. But in terms of media day stuff, I mean, you can't really go wrong with the trash talking and then the pre-written scripts by the guys that will win 3 to 4 games in conference this year as well.
Absolutely. In fact, like Clark Lee going out there promising that his program can, in fact, be the best in the nation.
It makes sense on paper. Stay with me here. Vanderbilt's in Nashville, Tennessee. Who doesn't want to be in Nashville? Problem is you do have to go play football there too.
Exactly.
And it doesn't seem like they want to. I know they have a football team, but they don't recruit football players. It looks like.
I don't know. They're recruiting scholars. That's all it is.
The next generation of academics will be coming through Vanderbilt, but it won't be on the football field.
Exactly. So we'll just put them in the Ivy League like Stanford when we're done with all the realignment.
I'm all for that.
I think, or just the ACC.
I've proposed this. I've said we need to make a switch. A fair trade would be putting Vanderbilt into the ACC so they can be with the likes of Duke, Wake Forest, Florida State, Miami, and we get Clemson in return. I think that is a perfect trade.
And I think we will actually be getting into conference realignment later this week, so that might be a good little segue for later this week as well.
Just a little tease.
Just a little tease, if you will. But going into the SEC Media Days, I know that the talking point is Georgia, of course, is coming off of a high, right? How does Kirby Smart manage his team, of course, losing so many different players into the NFL draft back in April? It seemed like he still has a great amount of confidence for his program. And then, of course, Saban, he never disappoints, you know?
Of course not. And I think you see that, too, in the media poll that happened there during that week that they had there. I mean, Georgia's going to go 12-0. Alabama is, at worst, going to be 11-1. So, everyone's going to talk about, how does Georgia retool? Georgia retools the way that they always have, which is they're going to get powerful running backs, they're going to have a crazy great defense, and they're going to have a walk-on quarterback who might be able to throw 15 touchdowns in 1 year. So, I mean, I fully expect, and, we talked about the media poll a little bit, like, it's going to be Georgia and Alabama again. There's nobody that's getting in between them. People are running up Tennessee. Oh, Kentucky could pop off an upset here. No way. Absolutely not. It's going to be Georgia and Bama and everybody else in the SEC.
Well, and to that point, I mean, look at Georgia's schedule. It sets up really well for them this year. Alabama has a few different minefields out there, but generally speaking, to your point, it's already written. You know what it's going to be come December.
Agreed. Now, I will say Bo Nix, who is going to be the quarterback at Oregon, who Georgia opens up with, has beaten them before.
And Dan Lanning knows Georgia better than anybody.
This is also correct. But outside of that game against Oregon, what is the game that gets them? It's not on paper. Florida's not beating them this year. It's definitely not going to be Tennessee. It's not going to be Kentucky. They're too undersized. I mean, Georgia's set up to walk through 12-0 back into Atlanta again and be in a position like they were last year where they can lose the SEC championship game and walk into the playoffs.
Hey, listen though, Brian Harsin playing against those Georgia Bulldogs, you never know what could happen there for the Auburn Tigers.
Another scandal.
Yeah, exactly.
From the boosters. Another scandal from the boosters.
They're desperate to get rid of him.
Only thing that I see happening to Brian Harsin this year is another scandal.
Did you see that one trend? I saw it was like a Reddit post or something like that where, and a new Auburn head coach comes in, they do moderately well, and then they kind of tail off a little bit, lose to Alabama. There's a scandal. You might see them get fired, but then they kind of come out unscathed. Then they go on to win 10 wins or 10 different games that year, beat Alabama, play in the conference championship, whatever else. And then they get this massive extension and then these other, of course, steps along the way. Do you think that we could be in store for a Brian Harsin 10-win Auburn Tiger team this year?
No. I think the trend dies with Brian Harsin. And he gets shipped back to Boise, Idaho.
Might be about time for that. Yeah. But suffice to say, Media Days was a fun time. It may not have been as fun as some of the other Media Days out there with the Big 12 and the Pac-10 and the Big 10, of course. And we'll talk more about that throughout the season and kind of what all that means for the broader landscape of college football. But going back a few more weeks prior to that, there was a big moment actually for you when it came to the baseball side of things in the SEC.
Yeah, well, a huge moment for me and all of Rebel Nation, right?
All
and
of
the
Rebel
SEC.
Nation.
I mean, the 64th team now, I get it. This is a Football Center podcast, so let me just refresh everybody's memory here. We're talking college baseball here, which, in my mind, has the best NCAA tournament of any sport, even better than March Madness. Ole Miss is the 64th out of 64 teams to get into the tournament. They make an improbable run all the way through to the national championship to win their first men's team championship in school history. One of the best ways to get my summer started was to sing Hotty Toddy every single night and watch them go all the way to the finals, beat Oklahoma in 2 games. That was awesome. And it also spoke pretty big volumes about the SEC having 4 of the final 8 teams in the tournament left in Omaha.
Yeah, no, it was an incredible year for the SEC. It was an incredible moment for the Ole Miss Rebels. Was it back-to-back years where a school in the state of Mississippi won their first team championship in baseball?
That is correct. Mississippi State did it in 21. Ole Miss had it in 22. So that means we get to say that we had the last one.
There you go.
For all
there
eternity,
you go. Bragging rights, right?
Yeah.
No, it's incredible to see how strong the SEC is across the board. It's not just football. Obviously, we are a football first show in most cases, but whether it's baseball, whether it's gymnastics, softball, the SEC is always going to be up there. And what we saw in the baseball tournament this year spoke volumes.
Oh yeah, it's SEC and everybody else. It just means more, as somebody once said.
It just means more. And to the topic of Ole Miss, we did have one big storyline that stood out with a Manning, right? And it wasn't Eli, a former Ole Miss great. It wasn't Peyton.
No.
It wasn't Archie. No, it was our good friend Arch Manning.
Yes.
Right? And I don't know if you recall, but we actually began season 2 talking about Arch Manning. Where was he going to go? Right? I thought Clemson made so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Florida made a ton of sense. Georgia, a number of programs out there that made a ton of sense for Arch Manning. And then it comes out maybe about a month or so ago that he was committing to Texas.
Tragic. Huge tragedy. Personally, I would have definitely gone to Georgia if I was him. I think all the tools are there for you to make your own legacy, first of all, but also to have a great defense always behind you and to win. I mean, when's the last time Texas put together a good season? It's 2009, and maybe you can count 2018 when they won the Sugar Bowl. But
when Texas was back.
Right, for approximately 60 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I get the draw to Texas, too. Austin, Texas is one of the most go-to places right now, especially. But let's look at this. He's going to be arriving there in 2023. They're going to be in the Big 12, probably until 2025. Let's say he redshirts a year. He redshirts 23. He's going to be thrown to the Wolves in 24. And again, this is a team that lost to Kansas last year, that did not make a bowl game, and this is where a Manning's going to be playing. I personally think the number one big development coming out of this is that Steve Sarkisian just bought himself a job for the next 3 to 4 years.
Absolutely. And that's one of the most interesting pieces of this puzzle because, Sark was coming off of a record year with that Alabama offense in 20. Everyone was really high on Sark. He'd overcome his demons, right? He had become this new phenom in the college landscape. He goes to Texas, and some people think that he might bring them out of the deep waters that Tom Herman and some others had brought them into. And suffice to say, that didn't quite work out in year 1. And I think going into year 2, it wasn't exactly all that clear as to what the expectation or what he needed to do to keep his job. And if nothing else, I don't think it really matters what happens for him this year. I think now what we put ourselves into this situation, we're waiting for 23 or waiting even to that point, 24. Okay, let's see what Sark can do with Arch Manning. Forget what he does with Quinn Ewers or whatever else. Wait until he gets to Arch. And if he succeeds with Arch, incredible. Great. I mean, look what he did with Mac Jones, a 3-star out of Jacksonville.
True.
There could be opportunities there, but I'm not entirely sure as to how long that leash is, and if he'll actually get to be the head coach when Arch Manning is actually a starter.
Well, he's going to definitely be. I think he'll be a head coach when he starts.
Okay.
He has to see through the number one recruit that Texas has gotten in some time. The problem for me is like Quinn Ewers, who's coming in from Ohio State, is going to have a good year, and he's probably going to have another good year the year after. Obviously, yet to be seen with like the NFL and everything like that with him, but that's a guy that it's going to be like if you're sitting there and you have Quinn and here's Arch Manning who's coming off his redshirt year, what decision do you make? Because that's what's probably inevitably going to happen. And again, it just makes no sense to me that Arch Manning is not a Georgia Bulldog. I thought that made perfect sense for so many reasons. The Texas stuff, I don't get it. I mean, Texas is winning 5 games in the Big 12. What's happening? What's changing in the next 2 years where they're going to come into the SEC and all of a sudden be able to win, 3, 4, 5 games? There's no way.
And we don't know what the divisions or lack thereof will look like come 25 or whenever Texas and Oklahoma do come over. But it's not a fortuitous position to be in, right? And honestly, I don't understand why Arch Manning chose Texas. The only thing that might have made sense, for example, Bryce Young last year succeeded in spite of his offensive line, right? It was one of the worst offensive line performances across the board multiple times, right? And to that extent, you saw this come out probably like September, October last year where Texas or their collective, or I forget who exactly it was going to offer specific NIL deals to offensive linemen, right? And if I am Arch Manning, I'm knowing that Texas is going out of their way to pay the best of the best in Texas or wherever else to protect me, right? And maybe that was his thought process. Maybe he's like, okay, I will be protected up front. I'll get around the rest of it. What do you think? Like, I don't know if NIL was the driving factor beyond him. I think probably Texas has to be, or somebody's got to be paying him a good amount.
Yeah, but I mean, you're coming from the Manning family.
Also,
they're not short on cash. I mean, I don't know. I get that he's there. He'll probably do okay, obviously, but to me, it doesn't make any sense that he's there, not a true SEC school. I'm just glad it's not Tennessee.
There you go.
Because that could have been a disaster.
You picked the right UT.
Exactly, yeah. The right shade of orange. The real orange. It's not, yeah. Backstory, as an Ole Miss fan, I was at the Tennessee game last year. Absolutely hellacious. I highly recommend nobody ever go to a Tennessee game. Even if you win, it's not worth it. It's like taking candy away from a baby.
That was the game where, was there like a 25-minute delay?
Yeah, I think it was more than that.
Because they were throwing things in the field and pelting the cheerleaders?
Right, yeah, exactly. So, for me, I'm not a big Tennessee fan. And we talked about baseball, forgot to mention, too, Tennessee blew their shot because they had the number 1 seed in the country and still found a way to choke.
To an unseeded team.
Yes.
Unranked team.
Unseeded Catholic Church school in Notre Dame. Anyway, I digress. We don't like Tennessee. This is not a Tennessee-friendly podcast. You want to listen? That's great. I'm happy to have every Tennessee
Apologies in advance.
Yes. So many apologies in advance for coming this season. But back to Arch Manning. Yeah, listen, he'll be fine at Texas. If he gets in there while they're still in the Big 12 and is able to play, I think he'll be doing great. But that's going to be a big shift going to the SEC from him. And Texas, too, as a whole, like, they're not ready for that.
Well, and I think to that point, you mentioned how does Sark decide if Quinn Ewers has a great year this year, has a decent year next year? I'd have to wonder if the NIL situation might come into play. Okay, well, Arch might be paid more to be the starter, and someone's in Sark's ear saying, hey, we got this massive organization in Austin that needs Arch to start, or vice versa for Quinn, right? And I hate to see that come to fruition, but I wouldn't be surprised. That's the new era that we're in.
They're paying money to get him there. They're going to definitely want to say in who's playing once they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we'll talk more about NIL as we approach the season. We have a lot to discuss over the next few weeks, but I think that wraps up our leading segment of Let's Crack It Open. Let's now get into a segment that Zach actually mentioned a little bit earlier. Let's go with NASCAR 1 to go.
White flag, next one is it.
So we are coming off of the wild race at Michigan, which I didn't even know if we were going to get it at first because there was some lightning and some rain in the area, and they had to delay the start. Was it like by an hour or so?
I think maybe even more.
And they were worried, of course, by darkness. There were no lights at the track, right?
Yep.
But we did get the race. We got the full race, mind you. There was no halfway cut or anything like that.
All 200 laps.
All 200 laps. A short race.
Kind of, yeah.
It felt shorter than normal. But what was really cool about it, going into the weekend, Bubba Wallace, my friend Darrell Wallace, up there on the pole. What were your thoughts coming off of qualifying, seeing Bubba up front?
Man, did Toyota have speed. Denny Hamlin said it best in this post-race interview. There's no way in heck they should have ever had a car not win this race today. I mean, those guys were so fast all week. I mean, Bubba Wallace comes out here. He's on a roll, by the way. I think this is his 4th straight top 10, and he's had 3 top 5s in the last 4 races. He's finally figured it out, and I think Toyota has too. He's going to turn some heads. But that car was supposed to win that race today.
Yeah. No, it was wild to see. Was it 1, 2, 3 Toyota to start the race?
I believe so.
And of course, a lot of people had high expectations for Kyle Busch, right?
Oh man.
And a number of other drivers, which. Of course, there were some different pit strategies out there. And then that one situation where involving J.J. Yeley, he gets loose and collects, was it 6 different drivers?
Yeah, so it actually turns out being in the worst car in the field and staying out on old tires is not a good idea.
Apparently not.
Yeah, maybe if you don't drive for Rick Ware, you shouldn't do that. J.J. Yeley gets loose, takes out very winnable cars, by the way. Cindric, Kyle Busch, McDowell gets caught up in that too.
Almirola was in it.
Almirola too, yeah. That really threw a wrench into the thing, to the whole race, in my opinion. And Kyle Busch, again, just cannot catch a break right now to save his life. Gets disqualified at Pocono, subpar run at Indy, crashes out of here at Michigan. And what's that? Oh, Ty Gibbs just got his first career top 10, and we don't know where Kyle Busch is going to be driving yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, to that point, Ty Gibbs was involved in that wreck. Right? He got a little bit of that too, but still came out with a strong finish. And yeah, I don't want to belabor the point too much on Kyle Busch, but it is really interesting because we don't know where he'll be next year. We don't know who his sponsor will be or whatever else. And to your point, he is not having the results that he needs.
No, not at all. And not that, Kyle Busch is going to be bigger than his contract negotiations too. I mean, it's Kyle Busch. It's not about a performance thing for him. But if I'm Joe Gibbs and I know I can save about $10 million a year by hiring my grandson, who looks like he's capable to take over that car, as opposed to trying to figure something out with Kyle Busch, who's all he's going to do is take up money and yell and yell and yell at your crew on the radio, I would think long and hard about switching over to Ty Gibbs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, there were a number of other things early on in that race that really stood out to me as I was watching. There was that moment where Kyle Larson was on the radio. He was trying to team up, if you will, with Chastain, and he made a comment. He's like, I don't think anyone ever works well with Ross Chastain. And I think that was actually a pretty interesting a moment of foreshadowing, if you will, looking into that wreck toward the end involving Christopher Bell. As a Ross Chastain fan, what were your thoughts going into that moment?
Well, he's right. He doesn't want to work with anybody except his teammate, which I think if you're an owner, why would you want anything but that? He worked well with Suarez later in the race, keeping him out front and everything too, kind of blocking for him to some extent. But in terms of the Larson thing, yeah, guess what? He doesn't want to work with you. You know why? Because you're trying to beat him, and he didn't want you to beat him. Ross Chastain has the amount of work ethic that probably 20 guys in that garage have put together. He will drive everything harder than he's ever driven it, and he will always outrun you too in less equipment. He had a really good shot at winning today too, until that thing with Bell happened. Now, in my opinion,
that was Bell's fault.
That's Bell's fault, right? Now, I had a good friend of mine mention to me too, Ross Chastain must have a magnet on his car for Joe Gibbs cars, because he has now taken out Christopher Bell. He's taken out Denny Hamlin. He's taken out Martin Truex. So whatever they have,
Kyle Busch is next.
Kyle Busch is definitely next, and he will make sure he's the last one that he does it too. But no, I mean, I think Chastain. That thing with Larson, I mean, yeah, of course not. He's not going to want to work with him. The incident with Bell, that's tough. But as a Chastain fan, it has been a little concerning because crashes out of Pocono, almost won Indy, gets disqualified.
By way of, yeah.
Well, was it legal? I don't know. And then
I believe the answer is no.
Yeah, fair. And then to some extent kind of crashes out here too with Bell. So I don't know. I'm worried if I'm him, because you were riding high, you were right on the heels of winning the regular season championship. That's gone, and you are dropping like a rock right now. 3 straight finishes outside the top 20. That's not going to cut it come the playoffs.
It does kind of remind me of what we saw from William Byron at one point in time, where, I mean, William Byron was the championship favorite coming out of the month of March.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's fine, but he's kind of been pretty middle as of late.
Fun stat for you, William Byron literally looked like the championship favorite, has 4 top 5s right now.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
Through 23 races. Yeah, and I think he has 5 DNFs, which is kind of wild too.
Only outdone by Alex Bowman.
Yes, somehow outdone by Alex Bowman. But in terms of everything else with the race, though, we saw the restarts were wild.
Not quite as wild as a week ago, but still wild.
No, except for Michigan, very wild. What did you think of those?
I think, especially it was really cool to see when the cloud cover came over, and how the cars started to stick to the track a little bit more. Given the opportunity, you saw some folks going 3, even 4 wide on some of those restarts, and it really came down to where you were starting, if you had clean air, right? And then to that extent, were you going to take the risk and try to go up top, get the momentum, and then come down? Would you go with a slide job on one that was at turn 1, turn 2? There were a lot of different ways around that track, and I know that the concern going into the race was that you would not have the opportunity to pass. But clearly we saw that was very much a possibility and an actuality.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that speaks a lot of volume, too, to the car itself. I mean, this car just keeps continually outperforming any expectations we had for it. So thank God for the next-gen car, because that has just turned around this whole entire sport, in my opinion. There's an energy around it we haven't seen it in quite some time. But talking about restarts, the one that I thought was the most interesting was the last one. The leader took the top in every single restart until the last one. Bubba Wallace takes the inside. He loses the lead on the restart, gets caught up in some traffic, never is able to run down Kevin Harvick. To me, if Bubba Wallace is going to beat himself up about anything on this race, it's why did you not take the top? That's the preferred line. Every leader's won the restart from that line all day, and you decide to go bottom on the restart that could change your season and really up your career.
And Bubba Wallace, the only NASCAR driver I have ever seen in a post-race interview crying because he did not. Yeah, because he finished second.
Yeah.
That I mean, I understand holding yourself to a high bar and all, but just win, man. Like don't.
Yeah, save the tears. Pick up the trophy next time.
Like I mean, he has some opportunities to do it. Probably not Watkins Glen, but he still does have some opportunities to get that win.
That car is fast right now. And that whole team has figured something out with Denny Hamlin over there, Michael Jordan, obviously the other co-owner there. And they put the right people in place over there. Dave Rogers is over there, longtime Joe Gibbs Racing crew chief. They've got it figured out. Bubba is in a position right now where, had he won today, he could be looking at a round of 8 playoff appearance, honestly. I don't think he's going to be a threat at Richmond. He's definitely going to be a threat at Watkins Glen unless, all hell breaks loose. But at Daytona, man.
He's fast.
Oh, my goodness. I cannot wait. And as we'll talk about this later, Ball with Y'all is going to be at that race.
On site.
That is right.
It's going to be a big weekend. But to that point, it's really interesting to see how the crew has gotten it together. Because if you recall, it wasn't too long ago where Bubba was crewing out, was chewing out his crew over the radio, right? And Booty Barker was getting cursed out for just trying their best, right? And then, of course, you saw some moving parts between the 2311 team and then also Christopher Bell's team. But it seems to be that they've gotten it figured out.
They have.
And it's taken a lot of pressure off. Well, not. He still has pressure on his shoulders, but not nearly to the extent that he did at one point in time.
He's able to race his car and not worry about where he comes out on pit road anymore.
Doesn't have to think that he's going to have to compensate for his team.
I think that changes your whole mentality, too. When you're driving out there and you make a pass or position, and then you're like, well, I'm going to come down the pits in 5 laps, and I'm going to lose like 4 of these. So, yeah, I think that's changed the whole dynamic of that team. And, man, Harvick winning today definitely throws a wrench into the playoffs. We haven't even talked about him. He won the race. Yeah,
I think we buried the headline.
Yeah. So the points battle is just insane right now.
So obviously, last I saw, was it Blaney is up by 19 or 20 points?
There you go, 19.
Wow,
you nailed it around the head. So we have 15 winners,
and he's 4th in the regular season points right now.
Yes, yes, he is. That's a real thing, and he may not make the final 16. This is by far, as someone who's watched every season of NASCAR from 04 on, this is by far the most competitive season I've ever seen in my life. I don't think it'll ever get topped again, too. I think the new car plays a lot into it, but man, these point standings, you have 15 guys that have won a race for 16 spots. Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex are sitting 19 points apart for the last spot in. It's going to go to one of the two of them, unless there's another new winner. And they're in the top 5 in points. Yeah. But because of all these winners, they get shifted down, and now Blaney's the last guy in. And there's 3 races left, and they're very, very different tracks.
Well, and the incredible thing about it, too, we have 6 different guys who've won multiple races this year. Mm-hmm. And yet we're still seeing an incredible amount of parity across the board, right? We're Chase Elliott's over here running 11th with all these other... I mean, look at the top 10 today. A wild group. Same thing last week. Mm-hmm. A wild top 10.
Yeah.
And speaking of top 10, to go to your point about Bubba Wallace, there was a driver who finished 10th who had no business being up there, you would think.
Yeah.
But Ty Gibbs.
Yeah.
He is driving for Kurt Busch because he still has the concussion thing going on.
Correct.
And he's been pretty impressive.
Ty Gibbs has been more than impressive. I know people are like, well, another year in Xfinity Series could do him good before he comes up. There is no point in having him in Xfinity, especially with a new car like this where it's like, these guys are going to get another additional year of experience with this car than you would. I think he has to be in the Cup Series tomorrow. If I was Joe Gibbs, I'd let Kyle Busch walk. And I figured out with Ty Gibbs. I honestly do. And the fact that he's put that car 16th, he had a top 15 at the Indy Road Course last week, and now a top 10 at Michigan. I know the cars are fast, but you got to get him to the finish line. He overcame a pit road penalty. Some other guys did not. But...
Was he plus 14 after the last restart?
Yes. Yeah. Restarts 24th and drives up to 10th in a car that is usually around a 10th to 5th place car, I'd say. And it's his 3rd career start.
No, it's been incredible, honestly. And I think the really cool thing about it, I don't know if you heard, I think it was Denny Hamlin that commented on this. So Ty Gibbs wasn't even supposed to be in that car. It was supposed to be John Hunter Nemechek.
Correct.
And one thing led to another, and Ty ends up in the car.
Well, it helps when your father or your grandfather's name is writing the checks, but it also helps too when, obviously, we see in the Toyota pipeline right now the guys that are not in the Cup Series, who they think is the most ready. Because it sure as heck ain't John Hunter Nemechek, and it sure as heck is Ty Gibbs.
No, and he's been an incredibly impressive driver at the Xfinity level, obviously. And to your point, every single race that he's not at the Cup level is to his detriment.
Correct.
Because it's one more race where Kevin Harvick, where Denny Hamlin, where all these guys who aren't really comfortable with the car yet can become more comfortable with the car.
Right.
And one where you are not given that opportunity.
Correct. And think about this too. There's going to be guys from Xfinity that are going to be moving up next year too. We've heard a lot about Noah Gragson moving up. Maybe even somebody like a Zane Smith by chance. Those are guys that he could be on the same playing field with, or that he could let get further away. So, yeah, I don't know. But back to the whole points thing, we talk about, who needs a win. Obviously, Blaney and Truex are still there. Do you see any of those two guys winning in the next 3 races?
I like Blaney this week at Richmond.
Okay, is that a pick? Or
That's not a pick. No,
okay.
No. We'll get into that on Friday.
It's like we're ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, no, we're a little bit. But I do like Blaney at Richmond. And also last time, I think he'll do well at Daytona, of course. But you don't want to wait. You don't want to have to be walking into Daytona needing a win. What I think is really interesting about it is Truex can catch Blaney on points. He doesn't need to win. I mean, obviously you want to win to make your life easier, but he can just get him on points. If Blaney has one bad week and Truex goes out there and finishes second, all of a sudden the whole tables are turned, right? And that's a really interesting position to be in, because ultimately I don't even know, going into Daytona, do you want to see a new winner prior to August 27th?
It might make it easier at that point, because at that point you know what you have to do, and the points are off the table at that point. But, I mean, to your point though, Blaney at Richmond's not a crazy pick. Neither is Truex. I believe he's won there 3 times. And Penske runs well at these little, 3/4 mile, 1 mile racetracks. Wouldn't surprise me to see him pull one off there. But we have that. We have Watkins Glen and then Daytona for the regular season finale, which, even if there's not another winner before then, is just going to be absolutely bananas. Especially with how the guys ran there early in this year. Bubba Wallace came across the line second in February. Keselowski and his teammate Buescher, they both won the duels there that week. Harrison Burton was a top 5 car all speed weeks and through the first stage as well.
So I got turned upside down.
Exactly, yeah. Upside down in a race car, not where you want to be.
Generally not a good idea, no.
No. So, I mean, I can't wait to be there. I know this will be your first time going there. I am so excited to see your experience.
It's gonna be incredible. And hopefully, see, I'm passively a Ryan Blaney fan, right? He's good friends with Chase Elliott. So I want to see him do well, but I'm not remotely comfortable with him actually making the playoffs at this point in time. And it's incredible, because when was the last time we had an all-star race winner not make the playoffs? It's been a while.
Probably 2014. Jamie McMurray.
That would make sense.
That's about I mean, that's a while ago, though. And that's before, well, it actually was the year that they expanded to 16 drivers. But it's a rarity. We've definitely never had a guy finish top 5 in the regular season points and miss, and we might have 2 of those this year. 2. Also, we didn't even talk about Eric Almirola's won at Daytona before.
He has.
And he's going to be going in there. Maybe this is his last season, maybe it's not, but he's going to have the extra motivation to get that win too. So
I'd say there's a good handful, maybe 5 to 6 drivers that can go into Daytona and win.
Let's not forget Corey LaJoie either.
So close at Atlanta.
So close.
But
no.
so far.
But no.
I mean, like you said, Blaney will be up there. Mm-hmm. Wallace will be up there. Brad will be up there, right? Cindric, I mean, obviously he's won, but like what comes with those different names that, generally speaking, are not up there every single week, it can happen at Daytona.
Stenhouse. Todd Gilliland.
Michael McDowell.
Yep.
Is he in range to actually make? So he
could do it.
Still at least 30th?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be just chaos. We've been spoiled with the season, so I am excited to see how it ends, and I'm also excited to get us into football season, which college football will be starting the day of Daytona race.
There you go. With the mighty FAU Owls taking on, the Charlotte 49ers?
I believe so. My proud alma mater. I will be watching via cell phone.
Yes. I mean, simultaneously, of course, streaming Vanderbilt in Hawaii.
Of course. Which we will get into our Hawaii segment later this week. And that will be a very fun segment we're going to have for the rest of the year. Do you want to talk to the listeners about that, or do we want to save that for...
I think we can save it.
Okay.
I think we've gone into a lot today.
I know.
The first episode in 2 months, and it's been a jam-packed one, to say the least.
And we don't even have any actual football games to talk about yet.
No, so the fact that we made it almost 40 minutes is impressive.
I'm very happy with this.
But nonetheless, so thankful that you chose to spend your morning, your afternoon, your evening with us. Like, as always, make sure that you share with your friends, like, subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. We are also on all the social medias, so Facebook, LinkedIn, probably, Instagram, Twitter,
TikTok.
TikTok. How can I forget about TikTok?
That's the big one.
That's the big one. Make sure you check us out there at Ball With Y'all, just about everywhere. And as always, we appreciate you listening and allowing us to talk some ball with y'all.
Catch y'all Friday.